Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
Pod Smash,
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer.
We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are talking about replaying games, not role-playing games. So if your eye, like mine, saw that title and thought they're talking about role-playing games again, no, we are not. Because we talk about RPGs a lot of all kinds. JRPGs, action RPGs, tabletop RPGs, too many RPGs. So we're talking about the idea of what is your methodology of replaying games, what is the value in replaying games, and just this notion of like, what, you're not done with it when you finish it? That's odd. That's not something that's often done in entertainment, although that's crazy. That's a crazy statement because it's people often revisit their favorite books and movies and TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
So just scratch pretty much the last 30 seconds of what I just said. And instead, we're going to get to all that later and talk all about all that later. But for now, we're where gaming grows to grab a beer. So what are we drinking tonight?
I'm actually not drinking a beer because this has a little bit of a story. Do I have time for a little bit of an account with what I'm drinking?
Sure. We'll just cut into one of our other segments.
Yeah, it's fine, I think, because we have the same favorite thing. Maybe we can just trim that down.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we have the same favorite thing. We might not.
I mean,
anyway,
yeah, probably.
So I'm drinking a bourbon called Blanton's. And if you know bourbon, you'll know that is a very highly sought after bourbon. It's usually in very limited quantities. And so there is my story. So Virginia ABC stores changed their strategy in how they're going to release highly sought after limited release bottles of across different things, various Japanese whiskeys, other kind of barrel aged, single cask, etc. things, to a social media drop on Facebook will identify what stores have stock without telling anyone what the stock is. Now, I've just presented to you their new model. What do you think is the default human response to you've just been notified that the ABC store down the street from you has something that's rare? What are you going to do? Or what would a person do that wants this stuff?
I mean, depending on the person, they would go stand in line and
they would go rush the store
as
immediately, right? Yeah. So what this looks like, according to the comments on Facebook, because I am trash and we'll go look at comments, people rolling up like clown cars, gathering their buddies because they've limited the bottles to one per person per day. And so one person gathers like 10 of their buddies. They all pack into a car, fly to ABC, roll out, cut everyone in line, yell at each other, and basically like verbally abuse one another the entire time, all fumbling over the need to get something that might be rare. They don't even know what it is. They're just showing up at the store like, oh, I gotta have this thing. It's awful. It's horrible. And yet somehow following the same procedure, I actually just drove by an ABC store that happened to be 20 minutes away, close to meeting my wife for lunch. And I was 10 minutes early. So I was like, well, I guess I'll go in here and see what they had. And I got my bottle of Blanton's, which is awesome because I haven't had it in a very, very long time. And that's my story. So thanks, nice. Virginia ABC, for that cluster bomb of a situation with highly sought after liquor.
and avoiding it, and I guess thank God for avoiding it, right?
Jeez.
I am drinking from Bell's Brewery, which is
they don't make no junk.
Yeah, solid brewery. Mm-hmm. Rind Over Matter. They had it at. Ooh. They had like two They had two of these sitting there in the like grab and go section of Food Lion. I was like, yes. So this was actually like, I wasn't at Food Lion intending to purchase beer, but I was like, since those were there, I just found some other ones I liked and threw them in there because like, I want to grab these last two Rinds Over Matter. I think I've had it before, but it's been a while. I don't know if I had it on the show either, but it's a wheat ale, part of their wheat series. It's wheat with lemon and orange zest, and it actually has, I don't think it's unfiltered in regards to like the barley being filtered out, but I think that the orange zest is like floating around there in particles because like if I hold it up to the light, there's definitely something floating around in there. Let me read the back of it. Brewing beer isn't just a collection of ingredients and techniques. It takes an act of will. With a dash of real lemon and orange zest, this wheat ale is bright and refreshing. It's more than the sum of its parts. It's rind over matter. It's good. It's got a little bit of like sour, almost like it's like a weird bitter and sour don't typically go together usually, right? Like beer is usually either sour or bitter, and usually not both. But this kind of tastes like both. Like it's like sour on the front end and then bitter on the back as it goes down. And I like it. It's not overly bitter though, so it's just good beer flavor with a little bit of orange zest to it and some like a bitter. The back of my mouth feels like it's got a bitter taste in it. So I like it. I like it. I recommend Bill's Brewery. Anything, like you said, they don't make no junk. So
they don't. And you may have had it before, but only last year because it came out for the first time ever in 2021.
Nice.
And it's part of the quote Oberon season. So if you've had Oberon, that's a wheat ale as well, ish. It's like a hopped wheat ale. They also have a new beer last year, 2021, called Uberon. So this Rind Over Matter is yet another like new release last year in their wheat series. So
I love I can't resist a good pun, so I had to buy it for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Great. Well, do you want to just jump into favorite things and talk? Because I kind of just want to talk about that.
Yeah,
because I think
I do, and I want to decompress. So yeah, 80-bit pod smashes our favorite thing.
80-bit pod smashes our favorite thing.
Favorite things, a segment of our show where we usually just talk about something we're digging in our own lives, something we've experienced, shallow or deep, meaningful or shallow, whichever way you want to go. And this past week, we went to go see Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, episode 200, live at Richmond, the National Theater. And it was, I thought, absolutely incredible. So tell me, what did you think of your first exposure, I'm aware of Colin Moriarty, Dustin, and Chris Raygun?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. They have good chemistry. Clearly, they've been doing this for a long time together. I actually was also surprised to enjoy Snark Tank. I didn't think I was going to dislike it.
Right.
But I don't know. I was still kind of skeptical. It was unknown. It was an unknown element. So
same here, yeah.
It was a little bit... It wasn't... I wouldn't say it was like my favorite, like my new favorite podcast or anything like that, though I am interested in listening to them now. Both shows, actually. But it was fun. Like it worked better. It worked better than I expected. Not gonna lie though, when he walked out with his co-hosts, who are hilarious black guys, like big black guys, and he's this tiny little like skinny short white dude, nerdy dude. I was like, how is this gonna work? And it worked great. Yeah, they were great.
They're awesome.
He almost plays the straight man, right? Like, to them he lets them be the sort of wild characters, and then he kind of plays the straight man, kind of setting them up for jokes. It worked great. They did a good job. So I was pleased about that. And then the show itself, that was good. They had good knowledge. I kind of felt vindicated because a lot of the things that they would talk about, the points they would bring up as they were kind of discussing these games, are a lot of the same points that we bring up. So I was like, oh, sweet, awesome. As opposed to like the audience that would be like, I really liked the sound design. It was really good. I'm like, oh, low hanging fruit, guys, low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
so
good.
the episode, just to our audience here, the episode was ranking the top 25 best PlayStation 4 games across the platform now that we're into the next gen. PlayStation 4 is kind of swan singing itself out of whatever. I mean, there's a lot of cross-gen titles out there now, but so it was a good time to do that. And so they polled the audience, and the audience collected their ranking, and then each of the three hosts, Colin, Dustin, and Chris, each had their own ranking, and then there was a combination of them presented to everyone for the first time, including the hosts, in order on live. And so we got to start at 25 and work their way all the way up to the top. And with every single game, there was a segment where they were allowing the audience to chime in and ask a question. And so to your point, like each of the three folks that do the show had wonderful things to say that were not repetitive, they were not boring, and they were actually critical of all the 25 titles. And then, like you said, the audience would ask a question, and some of them came across like not even related to the game at all. They just took the time to like ask a completely unrelated question, or it was something like you had mentioned where it's really low hanging fruit or shallow. So yeah, feeling
I know. I would say that for the most part, people, when it was there, because there were people during the Snark Tank that would be like, I'm tired of talking about this. I want to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this. But then during the actual Sacred Symbols show, people stayed mostly on topic to the game that they were talking about. I'm just I'm a little bit annoyed they didn't leave time. I mean, I know they were trying to get through a lot of content, but like with that in mind, I almost think they should have just gone to done the top 10, because then they could have had more audience questions for each title, right? More audience comments for each one, instead of and I feel like the show would have worked just as well. It actually would have worked better because it would have been more focused on those 10 titles. And honestly, the top 10 titles that ended up being picked were pretty much what I expected and were the most interesting part of the show, right? Talking about those 10 titles and in which order they came in. So it was disappointing because by then they had to rush to get through it, right? Like, because they had spent so much time gabbing about like number 17, number 18, right? Like the higher ones up there, because they felt like they had more time at that point.
Right.
I will say that as far as like just a weird nitpick that I also noticed in hindsight, Colin Moriarty really, for someone who like is kind of a video game industry pariah right now, dude loves to still name drop. You know what I mean? Like he'd be like, well, so when I interviewed Hideo Kojima,
yeah, he does.
Like,
he does.
Yeah,
do
David
that,
Cage called me an a-hole. I was like, wait a minute, dude. But I guess if I had that experience, I would too. But there's definitely something to say about just being like, okay, dude, we get it. You like and the co-hosts were great, but like it was clear like they don't necessarily know all these people. They're not like name dropping like, oh yeah, me too. It would be one thing if they all had the same level of sort of like fame within the industry, but he's clearly, I'm not saying he's flaunting it, but maybe he just can't help himself from sort of like,
that's what I'm thinking. And I think like
dropping.
It qualifies his opinion or his critique, and so he feels like he needs to say or like to justify something when he says it. Like when you make a comment like the gaming industry has a vitriolic reaction to the name David Cage and I don't know why, and then if you just left it at that, that would kind of be boring. So I guess that's a small example, and I'm not defending him because I agree he kind of does like sometimes unnecessarily say, oh yeah, I talked with Amy Hennig and like walked into her office and saw Uncharted 4's like drawings on the wall, and that's not the same order that we got as release. That whole comment, like how does that affect your rating of Uncharted 4 as we got to play it, like the audience got to play it, because it's a very different view, but it doesn't really affect our ranking at all, has nothing. So that was kind of an irrelevant comment. I enjoy hearing it because I want inside baseball. I want to see that. So I guess he's trying to play, but I don't know, but I totally understand.
I guess,
that it does come across as.
But that's, it's like a different context, right? Like I would be fine with him playing inside baseball, like talking to us because we clearly, we'd be like up and coming, and talking to him about like someone who was clearly more experienced. But I guess the show presents them as peers, as equals, and it's almost like he's like, I'm going out of my no, I don't think he is. Like he doesn't come across as going out of his way to do it. But the fact that he still does it anyways, you'd think he might be a little bit more cognizant to just not. Like say it when it is like absolutely relevant, when like you said with the David Cage comment, but like interviewed Hideo Kojima. It's just like unnecessary, man. Like, because I'm sure those dudes would have, like Dustin and Chris would have just like loved to have been in his shoes and done that at some point in their lives as well. So it's just like, I don't know. But still, that was just a tiny little nitpick. Other than that, that was great. I loved going to our favorite restaurant as well, Jack Brown's, for burgers.
Yes, that was fantastic. Yep.
I want you to tell people what you ate here in a second. But the funny thing, my funny experience going out with you is that I literally ran into, so I can't even barely get time to spend time with like the people I know and care about in my life. And yet I walk out of the house with you once and run randomly into like 3 people that I knew from my past, and like different people, different stages of my life. It was like one old coworker from my current job I ran into a girl I knew in college that she was like a freshman going into the theater program as I was a senior graduating out of it. And then I ran into some kid I knew in Boy Scouts back in like like high school. I'm like, what in the heck? Like,
what is happening?
Where are these people? Why am I running into them all within like hours of each other when like I said, I go through my life barely seeing even the people I want to see.
And the only one that makes sense would be the old coworker who worked in a place in Richmond, because Richmond is where we were. You went to school in Harrisonburg, so your college, your college friend was in Harrisonburg, so random cross path in Richmond. And then
now she works in Richmond at the restaurant we were eating at. I was like, she was our server, and she happened to be our server. It's like,
how does that
What
happen?
the heck? How does like the stars align? She's actually not the first person that I knew back in Harrisonburg. Like actually there was a girl I knew in high school who actually worked at that same Jack Brown's for a while. I don't know if she still does, but I was just like, man, it's like I just run into people I know at that Jack Brown's. Apparently I should go there more often. So I was amused by that whole thing.
It was funny. Yeah, it was cool. I had a great time. It was awesome. The weather was great. We sat outside to eat, and then we moseyed on over to the show. And upon walking in to the National, there was the merch table right up front and center, and there was a little bit of a line. But behind the merch table was Colin's girlfriend, and if you follow him and know him, like I've done for years, you'll know that she's Micah. And I was like, oh, hey Micah, what's up? And I bought a shirt, and it was great. I didn't know the other lady working behind the counter was Dustin's wife, Holly, who then later came up on stage and like sang a number. Who had a killer voice.
That was weird. Whoa. She had a good voice. She had a fine voice, but it was a weird, it was like a glory, glory, hallelujah, but they like changed the lyrics to gamer lyrics, and it felt weird. I know that it's not like a religious song necessarily. I mean, it is, but it's like, it felt weird. It felt weird. I didn't like it. I would rather they not do it.
Oh, I thought it was just a fun bit. You know, it was presented as a bit.
I wasn't like
take itself seriously.
I was just like, this is. But it wasn't funny either, right? To me, I was like, okay, I'm not offended by this, but I'm also not like delighted by it either. I'm just like, okay, this is a thing, right? Like,
could be a context thing. I don't know, because you haven't listened to these people talk as long as the audience has, and so I don't know. It made sense to me. It clicked. It was part of the context of their vibe, their show, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, that's to each their own, right? And I love the show.
Well,
it was
really
like
was like a first impression situation for me, so
right,
that makes sense.
And that's the funny part. Leading up to the show was like, this is happening. You and I have never done anything video game related in a big public way. We've never been to expos or any cons or anything like that. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm paying for the tickets. You have no clue what you're stepping into, but I am a longtime fan of Colin and I have to go see them. He's finally local. He's been on the West Coast my entire life that I followed him. And now he's here in Richmond. I'm doing this. And I just like impulsively was like, hey, April 30th, can you do it? You said yes. I was like, done. Tickets are mine. I got you. And that segue is like finally meeting someone who inspired me to even care about podcasting with you. Like, he was part of Kind of Funny, and Kind of Funny was a major influence for me to want to start expressing critical video game opinions as an adult with validity on the internet. And here we are with 80-Bit Pod Smash. So like, he was a huge pillar in that decision, along with Greg Miller. And then later on, getting to know like Andrew Renee and Brittany Brombacher and Kristen Steimer over at What's Good Games. They've continued to fuel that passion in me. And I've listened to the video game news for years from these voices. They've been in my head through many, many aspects of my life, including 2 children and their births and like work travel and airplanes and various places. So this is a big deal. Like, to finally meet, quote, you always say like, oh, don't meet your heroes or something when you come to find out that someone has fallen from grace that you've like admired. But in this case, I did. I got to meet a hero and it was awesome.
The saying is often in reference to the idea that like, if you actually like talk with them in real life and find out that they're like really rude or mean in person, right?
Yeah. That's not what happened here.
And you didn't actually meet him, but you got to see him in person, you know.
Yeah, it was great. 50 and feet away from tried to get the VIP tickets where you could get a backstage with a picture and like a conversation with him, but they were sold out so fast I wasn't quick enough on the clicks.
Well, that would have been nice because then we would have plugged our podcast. I did tell you that you should. I said you should raise your hand and then just get on the microphone and say, can you say the words, check out 80bitpodsmash.com? That's all. And see if they'll do it. See if they'll plug us for no reason.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous. It would be a dream of mine. In fact, I literally have dreamt this, that I would talk to Colin Moriarty on our show and interview him. I have an exact topic that I would want to discuss with him, and we could have a 3-hour-long conversation. He's not the only one I've had actual dreams about meeting, but he's one of them. Yeah.
Nice.
Industry staple. Like, the dude's the library of video games. Like, he knows so much. It's insane. So I look up to him a lot. And he's always conveyed like humility. At least I know you really didn't see that because in the one show and like a vertical slice of who he is, but he's always expressed humility and he's always confident in who he is. And so like, there's respect for that in this world today.
Sweet. Well, I think it was a good time. I one way or another, I had a good time. I've never been to actually a live podcast before. I've like them do live podcasts, right? My podcast will do live podcasts now. So I've heard the format before. We've talked about doing live podcasts before, but that was an experience. So, and I've never been to the National either. I lived in Richmond this long, right? Like, or lived near Richmond, so pretty crazy.
Historic
but
venue,
anyways, it was. I mean, just getting out of the house and doing something with a friend too was good. So I'm glad you forced me to do it by paying for me for like everything and treating me like I was a hot date. Like I felt pampered. I almost gave it
you
up.
should have.
But
I mean, I did sleep in your couch, so thank you and your wife for that.
I could have snuggled.
The same weekend you had company. Right? It was a big deal, so I really do appreciate the place to stay.
It was good. Yeah, for sure. All right, y'all. That is enough for favorite things. Obviously extra long, but we kind of cut out our banter for it. And it was worth it. So that leads us to our final segment for our main topic, which is DLC. All right. So this DLC comes in 2 parts. So I'm not going to tell you the second part until you answer the first part. I want you to tell me what is I probably should explain what DLC is first real quick. DLC is a segment of our show where we have a fun discussion that you might normally not have about video games. And it's meant to just be a kind of fun, lighthearted discussion. Not that this topic's going to be particularly heavy or anything, but it's just kind of just another twist on the discussion we're having tonight. Sometimes it's related to the main topic, sometimes it's not. This one, it is. I came up with it last second here. And like I said, it's 2 questions, 2 parts. The first one's not going to sound that different from a question you probably have answered before. But what is a TV show or movie or book that you could read or watch or see over and over again and never get sick of it, possibly even have it be more fun and more fulfilling like the second, third,
I got an answer already. You're not even done with the question yet.
Okay, yeah. So that's part 1. So you answer the answer part 1 now.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
All right, 1990.
The live action.
Pick a different one.
Why?
It's not gonna,
come on.
Only because you'll find out when I say the second question.
That's I've watched it throughout my life, and it changes as I get older, and like I have kids, and I understand. Like I get so much more emotional connection.
You'll understand when I ask the second question.
That's so disappointing. That's like the perfect answer.
I know. I'm sorry. I know that is the perfect answer for you. What's something else?
Oh man. Back to the Future.
Okay. Back to the Future. All right. That'll work.
Yeah.
I'll answer. My answer would be, gosh, there's so many, but I'll go ahead and say, because I've said it before here, seasons 1 through 4 of Arrested Development, I could watch over and over again. And every single time, I do watch it over and over again occasionally. And every time I watch it, I find something. And not only do I not get bored of it, I find something else hilarious that I probably missed before. So that's my answer. Okay.
It's Mother's Day Eve.
It's a Mother's Day Eve. Yeah. It probably is like Mother's Day, or it's like right after Mother's Day in this episode. No, Mother's Day would have been a week ago.
After. Yeah.
So the part 2 of the question then is, okay, so how would you, and this is why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wouldn't work, how would you make a video game of that piece of content with modern game principles? Because I know there are like old Back to Future games, but like what would a modern day like video game look like? What genre would it be? Like, would it be like super good graphics? What, maybe if like a dream developer making the game, and what about its rewatchability would, like, you being a master of it, like what makes it something that like, oh, because this is rewatchable, this very quality would make this game so good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I could totally answer this for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then fine. You can do both.
I am kind of messing with you, but also like I can come up with a serious answer for this.
All right, do it.
If you'll allow it. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, the original Ninja Turtles movie in 1990 was very, very dark, and it dealt with loss, and it dealt with grieving, the loss of their father and the loss of their brother, and how they had to band together as brothers to overcome that loss, but also they all reacted to it differently and needed and required a different emotional response to that loss as they processed it, and they had to overcome all of that together, and their power was better together than separately. So Rocksteady could very easily make Batman-esque game as far as gameplay, combat mechanics, and exploration, where you can play as each individual turtle over the course of the storyline and the plot, dealing with each turtle's unique response to loss and dealing with the loss through either an extra villain that's not in the movie, but there's enough villains in the movie. You could probably fill this out. The Foot. Then you can add societal context to a ninja clan, which is a gang that's ransacking the public space, and it's causing public fear and causing disinformation to spread. And there's like hushing of a journalist, April. She's trying to be hushed by the ninja or by the Foot Clan. And so that can be relevant to today with like misinformation and not trusting the media. And you can weave such deep context to all of that. And I think Rocksteady would be the perfect studio to do it because they did such a good job with Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, specifically Arkham City, when they extended the context out to, just the one event at Arkham Asylum was one thing, but like across the whole Arkham City and the whole Gotham and the roped off criminal thing. But yeah, that's my answer. And I would play the crap out of that game over and over and over again, just like I've watched the movie 1,000 times.
Yeah, nice. That's good. That's a good one. What about Back to the Future?
So Back to the Future would almost, I don't know what developer made it, but there was a Ghostbusters game. I'm looking on my shelf. It was published by Atari. That's odd. And it was a high quality kind of The Force Unleashed looking game, third person. So it would be the third person over the shoulder. Maybe it would be a little bit of like Tomb Raider Uncharted, but with Marty McFly. It'd be really difficult
quick, if I can interject. I'm almost saying, so you need a game that does car mechanics well, but you also need a game where you can run around third person sandbox. I almost feel like Back to the Future is like itching for like almost like a Grand Theft Auto treatment. Yep. Now I don't think Rockstar necessarily would ever do it, but if we're talking dream developers, like, can you imagine like Rockstar? So you have the DeLorean, but like unlike the movie, you can actually like hop back and forth between the two timelines and like
that'd be sweet. Yeah.
Or like even up to multiple timelines, but then they'd get to design the sandbox. It's the same town, but they'd get to design it in multiple different timelines.
That'd be pretty sweet.
That would be so sweet. That is like, we need a good like proper time travel game. Like there are games that have time travel elements in it and all that, but like a game where like the premise is time travel, I don't think that's ever properly been done before. And I feel like Back to the Future in general is reaching that level of zeitgeist and level of also like, it's one of the few that hasn't been like rebooted yet, right?
That's true.
To my knowledge, right?
It has not. You're
no,
right.
So like it's like okay, yeah, it's got that equal amounts of nostalgia and not quote unquote been ruined, not quote unquote been mined to death, that it would be perfect.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's fresh IP,
good.
like ripe for the harvest.
Right. But like I wouldn't want it to be a movie. I would want it to be something like a game where it's like
it'd be awesome.
Be its own thing.
And think about like the modern consoles have these awesome solid states in them, like Ratchet and Clank being able to just like zip between timelines and like you can see the connections that you do in the past affect the future, and you can kind of, the talent's out there. I mean, we just learned about refreshed our memories with Detroit and how David Cage and Quantum Dream did 40 different timelines that all have it based on the character decisions and choices, and how it all is succinct, and they can like close the loop on all 40 endings or whatever possible permutations there are. They could totally do that. Like the talent's out there. It can be done.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
So for my answer, real quick, in the last 2 minutes before we start, I would want I want Arrested Development to be done like a Telltale game, where it's like the whole emphasis, the whole focus is just on the character dialogue with very little like actual gameplay, but with choices and everything, and like 100%, please give me the full cast, right? Like give me all, like Will Arnett and Jason Bateman and Michael Cera, like everyone freaking. I guess you couldn't do it with Jessica Walters though. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I was just about to say. Yep, I was about to. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, so we just no, I can't even say we should like stitch it together with her old voice lines. That would be maybe the game could take place after she like passes in the canon of the show. It would be sad, but I would be okay with that. And then shenanigans ensue in the wake of her death. And the reason it's a video game then has like a canonical reason then too, right? Like it's one of the characters' primary points of view, and like that's the way they're processing. Like maybe Michael Cera's point of view, and that's the way he's processing the grief at the loss of his grandmother, is to like go surreally into his own brain and just pretend it's a video game.
That'd be awesome. And take some good writing to both honor the character and her life and not do it in a way, but also like walk the characters through processing the loss of Lucille, and that would be crazy.
Hilarious shenanigans,
right? Of course, it has to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big challenge, but it could be
with
done.
All that writing that makes it so that you want to replay it again and make different choices because you missed something, or even make the same choices but like catch all the jokes you missed the first time. Yeah, it's great.
Yep,
awesome. All right, well that is our DLC for the day. So listeners, what is a piece of content, book, movie, TV series that you could just read or watch over and over and over again And then what would make that an awesome video game if it was ever adapted? That kind of ties into our last week's episode. What would make that good source material for a video game that could be adapted? And what qualities about its rewatchability would make it a good game? So Termite will share with you where all the places you can share your DLC ideas with us exist out in the World Wide Web.
Tell us all about how we need an Avatar Last Airbender video game over at 80bitpodsmash.com.
Like a good, very well designed one.
Yes. 80bitpodsmash.com, where there are links to our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord. You can interact with us there. Drop us your thoughts, your comments, questions, concerns, ideas, feedback, however you want to talk at us. Just go do that. And we sometimes might want to read it on the show. We usually are good about responding, especially in Discord where it's like live chatting. It's great. Also, if you are coming by way of YouTube or Twitch, we have links to all of our podcast platforms, so you can get our audio feed on any device that you have through Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. And because I mentioned YouTube and Twitch, we have a monthly Twitch live stream where we review video games. We have 2 out the gate now. We did one on Elden Ring, and we did another dual review of Wonderlands and Horizon Forbidden West, and those are on YouTube. So go check those out if you haven't yet. And come get a part of some 80-Bit Pod Smash community, get involved, jump in. We would love to hear from you. 80bitpodsmash.com.
All right. Talk about replaying games, replayability of games, however you want to title this episode. That's what we're talking about tonight. So before we start jumping into the questions, though, I want to bring up a little fact that I had talked about once a long time ago. We did an episode on spoilers and spoiler culture, and whether or not like people in general take spoilers in general too far, or if the video game industry, like what counts as a spoiler in video games. It was a really good episode. You guys should go look it up, check it out, and listen to it. It ties in actually pretty well to this episode. But in there, I talked about a fact that I don't think comes up these days unless you're someone like me who gets really like haughty about spoilers. Like haughty looking down on people who care about spoilers. I don't actually. I actually try to protect my friends from spoilers, even though I don't care as much anymore for myself. But there is this fact. There's studies that have been done. I like look it up, Google it, and if I'm wrong, if other studies came out and proved this wrong, then I'm happy to hear that. But there were studies that were done a few years ago that basically proved that people don't actually care about spoilers as much as they say they care about spoilers. What they mean by that is they showed that they were able to demonstrate that people actually seemed to get a greater level of satisfaction and enjoyment out of a show or movie that they had already seen before. They knew what was going to happen, and they actually rated themselves as enjoying it more than the people who watched the same content and didn't know what was going to happen. And they explained this by saying basically like, when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to like engaging with content, again, a lot of people do so as a way to relax, right? And sometimes the stress of not knowing what's going to happen can actually ruin that enjoyment. Whereas if it's something you already know you like, you enjoyed it once or twice before, there's a comfort in knowing what's going to happen. There's a comfort in being able to kind of know what to expect. And in general, it's just sort of like this idea that like, I mean, there's a reason why reruns used to be the highest rated episodes on, you know, back when they did the Nielsen, well, they still do the Nielsen ratings, but back when Nielsen ratings mattered more than like online metrics, people would actually go back and like watch reruns, and more people would end up watching the reruns than watch the original, which meant that like there was a large retention value. You know, obviously there were some new people who hadn't caught it the first time, but that still means that a lot of people who had watched it the first time watched it again. And I think of things like even now today, you can look at metrics like the amount of times people watch The Office every year, right? Like these are the same people watching the same show they've watched every like year. Some people multiple times a year. Like we get enjoyment out of re-experiencing the things that we loved.
Yes,
and enjoyed. And just because we don't know just because we already know what's going to happen doesn't make it any less good. In fact, there's an argument to be made that knowing what's going to happen makes it better. So again, I'm not going to get into my treatise on spoilers right now. That's not the point of this episode. Instead, we're going to apply it in a, I guess, more positive way. Yeah. And talking about replaying video games. So yeah, we'll start there with this idea of replaying then, and just sort of ask, how would you define replaying a game? Is it like, oh, I fired it up for an hour, I've played a game, it's one of my favorites, I fired it up for an hour, enjoyed it, that counts as replaying it? Or is it more like I have to play it all the way through for it to count? Like, what's your criteria that you would say like, oh, that was me replaying the game?
Oh, replaying a video game is just revisiting it in some shape or form, even if it is like an hour, like, or you do commit to playing through an entire session again. And yeah, I do. I'd say both. Both count as replaying games.
Yeah, I think so. I would say in general, probably too. But like in my mind, when I think of like replaying a game, I'm like, okay, I've got like a month where nothing's coming out, so I'm going to go back to one of my favorite games and play it all the way through again, right? Like, as opposed to like, oh, Danny's coming over, we're going to go play, Smash Bros, right? Like, technically, yes, I'm replaying Smash Bros, but I'm not like, like to me, some games are just like games that you always kind of like fire up whenever you get an opportunity. Like they're more, I would always say, like, I would say that's party games. And when I'm playing a party game, I'm not like replaying a game, even though like I would also say, yeah, technically by the definition, like by my own internal definition,
I do have a caveat for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we get together and play Smash Bros and we're playing Smash Bros Ultimate, I guess is that what the Switch game is called?
That's what, it's Ultimate.
For some reason, that sounds really weird. But anyway, we would be replaying Smash Bros. If we fired up a retro version.
Like Melee,
Right. So the most recent entry in any of these like party games, like Mario Party, or like if we got together to play FIFA or Madden, like whatever the most recent one is, doesn't really count as replaying it because there's not a successor to it. But if we were to go back to Brawl, Melee, the Smash Bros. For Wii U, like to me, that would be like a replay. It would fall into that category. Oh, we're replaying this. And it's English like Mario Kart. If we get together and play Mario Kart 8, that doesn't count. But if we get together and play Mario Kart 64, yeah, we're replaying Mario Kart 64. This is awesome.
Sure.
Like,
but if I fire up God of War, even though it's the most latest iteration of that franchise, I'm still would say I'm replaying
that. Yes,
it.
because that's like a single player, beginning to end linear experience. You're gonna there's a story, it begins and ends.
Sure, it's got a beginning, middle, end,
game.
as opposed to a persistent game, a game that's sort of meant to be
fighting games or like
revisited frequently and stuff like that. Yeah, I get it. I mean, it definitely kind of is like in the eye of the beholder, one of those answers for sure, which is why I wanted to include it, because I would say that there are a lot of different like approaches to this. Like I like take a games as a service, right? Like, would you might not say, oh, I'm replaying Destiny 2 if you're hopping in on the latest content. No, you're hopping on the latest content. However, if
that's what makes me mad about Destiny 2, you can't replay it. It's gone.
Well, but if they did because they sometimes do they take things out of the vault. So they like took out the Red War or whatever it was, the very first Destiny 2 campaign, and re-released that, like opened it out of the vault. Then like hopping into that and replaying it, I would say yes, that's replaying it. So it's weird because like depending on the game, you could have like a single game, and then like if I were to fire up World of Warcraft Classic, that's replaying
you're
it.
Replaying
but firing up
World
of Warcraft Retail is not replaying it, even though it's the same game and has like had an unbroken. It's
wow, that's more intricate and complex than I
weird
thought.
And muddy, right? Yeah, and that's why I say it's all subjective. I think that just to narrow it down, I think we're probably going to be focusing specifically on like the reason I brought up movies and TV and books is because the closest parallel to that would be like the single player narrative experience, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So like I brought up the others just to say that this is sort of like more complicated. And then let's now focus in on re-experiencing a game that you were for all intents and purposes done with, but now are like craving the experience over again. So let's focus in on that. So with that in mind, why? What? Why would someone do this? Why would someone want to replay a game?
There is a cool article on medium.com, and I hope I can remember to link off to it. But there are 3 kind of categories as to why someone would want to replay old video games. And I totally agree with all 3 of them. So can we use that as a structure? And then you can add your own thoughts that you may have already had? Okay.
Hey,
so
there are smarter people out there than you and me. So if you want to give us a nice big 3 and then we can riff off of that, that's great.
Yeah. So the first point is familiarity. And this is like translating the word. So you will play games because it's familiar. We live in a very stressful world. No matter what people tell you, everyone experiences stress one way or another. And it's not that you'll only be stressful if you're poor, struggling. There are plenty of rich people who stress as well. So stress levels go through the roof. Gameplay, something to bring those stress levels down. Playing games you've already played before helps with that. Why? Because it's a familiar feeling. And for me, translating that to what Termite means, remember when we were talking on the show and in our review streams about how I kept putting off Horizon Forbidden West every time something newer would come out. So I started Forbidden West, then Elden Ring came, and then Gran Turismo 7 came out, and then Wonderlands came out. And then I finally circled back around to Horizon Forbidden West. And that's because that's the familiar one. I guess Gran Turismo 7 would be kind of like, I haven't finished it. It's kind of an ongoing, almost whatever. But so I won't count that. But Elden Ring and Wonderlands were 2 new experiences with a firm beginning and end, and I put those in front of Horizon Forbidden West. And that's because I loved Horizon Zero Dawn, and I knew that I was going to get more of that. It was the familiar thing, and to me, that rose to the top of like the fun and relaxation, therefore decreasing stress levels, right? That's what he says here. So I'm applying, yes, these are all new games, and no, they're not replayability. But when I go back to an old title, like Final Fantasy VII, when I want to play through it again for the 20th time, I'm going to go back there because that's the comfort food. That's my McDonald's, that's my KFC, pizza, like comfort food. It's like I'm in a stressful situation and life is just crazy and I'm overwhelmed with stuff, and I'm just going to go back to this thing because it's familiar and it helps and it makes me feel good. So there you go. What do you think? Familiarity.
Yeah, I mean, that is basically the same argument that they were saying with TVs and movie, like with other forms of narrative content. Is that familiarity? I mean, heck, I definitely do that with like TV and movies. Sometimes it's like I don't want to think, I don't want to like process, I don't want to pay attention to character arcs. Yep. I mostly just want to sit on my phone and decompress, but have something familiar on in the background. I'll put up It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or Arrested Development or whatever, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And then I don't experience that much with games because right now, at least in the stage of life, my gameplay time is precious, and there's probably a different reason on there that I won't like. I don't know what all
there
the
is a fourth
are.
one that I have that's not on this list that maybe we'll bring up, and it has to do with what I think you're talking about.
Sure, yeah. So there's like there are, I have other reasons that I personally revisit games and want to and desire to revisit games, but for me, familiarity isn't one of them, but I still totally get the impulse. And I have friends who are just like, yep, I play this game for like an hour every day just because it's comfortable, right? Like, you know, I fire up, if I've got a friend who, a buddy of mine at work who will just like, if there's slow or downtime at work, he's probably going to just fire up RimWorld because it's like he's played it a million times and with all kinds of different things, but he like always gets some enjoyment out of it and it's familiar and comfortable for him. It's just like a natural, like, yep, I'm gonna do it. So I think games can do that as well. And maybe when my kids are older and I have more time to just like play games in general and am getting my fill of new stuff, new experiences, then yeah, I might kind of dip back into sort of just like, yep, I'm gonna fire up this familiar game. So
yeah, and that's a great segue into it's not really a segue. Another point of this, if you look at it from a capitalist perspective, it's exactly why games as a service are a thing, and retention strategies are a thing, and marketing, microtransactions, and live servicey games that change content like Destiny 2 because they want to capitalize on that familiarity. There's folks that just play one game. I have a friend who plays Apex Legends. He's probably over 1,000 hours. It's all he plays. He's always online playing Apex Legends constantly. And I'm sure
I've got
it's
a buddy
because
who's like always playing Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft, but I think he's probably done with World of Warcraft now. But like for a while, it was like he was just ping pong between those two MMOs. It's like he always just wanted an MMO to play. Yep. And yeah, and I totally hearken that up to both familiarity and the fact that the game in this case, I think what you're hitting at is that the games are designed for with replayability in mind for the most part, and even the single player narrative experiences like. That's what New Game Plus is for. Yep. That's exactly what like, for. Yeah. That's what like games that have like builds. They want to entice you. They want, Elden Ring wants you to like kill bosses and get spells and equipment that you're never going to be able to use with your character build because they want to entice you to be like, you sure you don't want to play again and try using that big sword this time, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Like games do that all the time, and it's definitely now a part of the design where maybe it didn't used to be, but definitely. Yeah, I mean, trophy hunting too. Like, granted, there are usually ways to cheese around it, but there are like in games that have trophies in them that require multiple playthroughs, and the trophy system is like perfect for enticing that.
Okay, the next point in this article here talks about bringing back nostalgic feelings and memories.
That's it.
There are moments in the past.
That's the one for me.
Yes, there are moments in the past where such defining moments in our lives that we want to have that feeling again, even if it's just for a bit. And having experienced games from childhood, fond memories of like every time. It's why this right here is probably the biggest and loudest reason for me to ever want to replay games, but it's also the driving point for wanting to have a collection of video games that I surround myself with every day, as I have bookshelves of games surrounding my office and I work from home. So I have them right here. It would actually take some work in its current state to play most of them because I don't have enough room to like have everything hooked up. That's probably going to change in the past or in the future. We're talking about the past, right? So like, just I I look back at like Zone of the Enders, and I'm immediately transported back to I wanted that game because there was a demo disc for Metal Gear Solid 2, and I was so excited to play Metal Gear Solid 2. I was willing to take in a new IP, and Zone of the Enders is amazing, and it was around Easter, so springtime, every single spring. Inevitably, I'm going to think about those two titles. And then Grand Theft Auto 4 and Grand Theft Auto 5, both to me, I experienced them in the spring. So every spring I think of those as well. And Final Fantasy 13, same deal. It's wonderful. It's great. You get these vibes, whether it's the weather, it's the season, it's something you're playing now that harkens back to a memory, and you want to go experience that. You go back and play it, and you just kind of feel a part of your childhood again, and some great time in your life.
It doesn't have to be your childhood, man. Like I'm all nostalgic for God of War, because like all the talk Ragnarok,
that was also a spring game.
Me stoked and excited, and I hyped for it. And also this came around this time of year, and I'm like, oh, I really want to fire it up and replay through it again, just because I loved the game so much. It did so well. When they were talking about Death Stranding at the show, I was like, oh man, I'm feeling a weird twinge, a pull. I want to play it. I want that Princess Beach line again, which is really funny that Colin didn't know what he was talking about when he said that line. And he's like, never mind, to explain it would be too much. I'm like, this is 100% how I feel about Death Stranding. So
perfect.
Yeah, Death Stranding is one. I'm trying to think of what other ones.
I've been nostalgic and one dying to replay Ghost of Tsushima. Like crazy. It's been hitting me hard. And I didn't expect it. It came out of nowhere. It's like a combination of Elden Ring
for me, because
I want to play that too, but that's not replaying.
No, I want to replay Sekiro because I replayed Bloodborne and tapped into that nostalgia in October, and it was delightful. But like I had learned and realized how much I had grown as a Souls player by replaying through of Bloodborne 3 times, and decided that I think I could handle Sekiro better now, especially the parrying mechanics, and kind of want to have that experience. So yes, in one way I am seeking a new experience, but also I really just want to experience the game again. It was so much fun. So like there's a lot of games, and then like, talking about what you're talking about with childhood too. It's like I regularly get the twinge and the twang to play Ocarina of Time, just blast through it in a weekend or something, right?
Yeah.
Majora's Mask as well. Regularly want to play those games. Sometimes I felt a real strong pull to play Warcraft 3 back when Reforged came out and was a bomb. I couldn't stop thinking about how awesome the original was, and so I fired up. I got it. I got Frozen Throne installed. I think I even streamed it, and I was like, I just love this game. So like, those defining games from my childhood, I regularly get weird urge to, and it's not a weird urge, it's nostalgia. Everybody experiences it, but man, you have to jump through so many hoops sometimes just to satisfy that. It's
which
insane.
Is why I love my collection, because there's way fewer hoops to jump through to get that hit.
For sure.
It's like, what I find surprising, it fits in this category, is sometimes I listen to a lot of video game soundtracks on Spotify, and especially if I'm just need to focus and work and I don't need lyrics, I don't need anything crazy, I just want something. A lot of people listen to movie soundtracks in the same way, like the scores of movies, but a song will just hit and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to play this game right now. And the intro to Ocarina of Time, just the very the title screen, every single time it hits you right in the feels.
A little single piano.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Dude,
I'll catch. Phenomenal. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'll catch a glimpse of the sky on the right time of day, the right clarity of the sky, but just the blue against green, looking towards the horizon with clouds. It makes me think of, there are multiple games it makes me think of, but Zelda's the top of that list for it. I mean, because it was it would be I would get the most Zelda time on Saturdays, and I'd be out with my mom, groceries or whatever thing we were doing on Saturday morning. But I was oh my gosh, it's close to at noon. We're on our way home. I'm going to get lunch when we get home, and I'm going to fire up Zelda. And I just pair that visual with that excitement. And you'd think there are people that are you should look at the sky and be nostalgic for the outside adventures you had in childhood. And I'm nope, I'm excited for all the indoor adventures I had in childhood. But also on that list is Final Fantasy VIII and Skies of Arcadia, just games that had these big, and for my child brain, had these big, expansive, fully realized worlds. Doesn't always hit the same, of course, as an adult. But that's what I still crave, that feeling, and I pair those together. So I do want to move on to the next question. So if you have any closing thoughts,
that was the whole third point. We haven't about why.
I thought we did all three. You said nostalgia, and then they're designed for it, and
familiarity, and then nostalgic feelings and memories.
Oh, okay. What's the last one?
The third one's actually kind of a different flavor of the same topic, so it might be shorter, but it's a reminder of how simple life really can be. And I've just reading that. It's when you replay old games, it's going back to familiar feelings, faces, places, and listening to familiar music. So this is about the context that the games put you in. And you sort of just talked about that when you remembered like your childhood and you going out with your mom and then coming home and firing up Ocarina of Time. Because it's not, in that moment, it's like the visual of the clouds bring you back to the childhood experience that then led you to Ocarina. It wasn't like the focus was on Ocarina of Time. It was more like Ocarina of Time brings you into the context of your life at that time. And so I've had like charted my entire memory based on video game releases. Like I don't remember 5th grade. I remember the year I got Nintendo 64 and Mario 64 came out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was in this class, which happens to be 5th grade. It just takes me back immediately. And then like I remember Mortal Kombat 2 3rd grade. That brings me right back to my 3rd grade class. And like I was way too young to be playing Mortal Kombat, but here I was like so excited I couldn't even sleep because the game was coming out. And it brings you back to a simpler time. And to kind of piggyback off of your thought, I have these weird like thoughts whenever I'm out with my family now as an adult, kids, wife, we go do things. Like we go to see a museum, we go on a big long hike, we go out to eat afterward, restaurant, and we've had a whole day together. And like on the drive home, when it's usually nighttime and everyone's kind of quiet, I'm like daydreaming about, I wish I could just go home and like get away and just go play a game until bedtime. And then of course I'm a dad, so it's like, nope, you got bedtime routines and then you got to spend time, and it's a whole like work. We got to get ready for the next day, got to clean the kitchen. There's all these responsibilities that are now as a parent and an adult, but like as a kid I have these fond memories of spending days out of the house and then coming home and just going straight to a video game to decompress from the whole day. Maybe it's a little bit of an introvert in me, but that's a reminder of like that's what video games and replaying games can do is transport you into a different time of your life, and then think about that, and you can kind of
I'll say sort of a twist on this idea that also makes it feel distinct in my mind, because what you're describing still feels like just essentially nostalgia to me. But I think that there's a valid like idea, a nugget there that does feel distinct to me, and that is like it's like it can be a reminder of the either simpler or the more solid game design choices of the earlier titles. So I think, for example, like, you know, if you're a big BioWare fan, you know, I played Mass Effect after Anthem, but if you were a big BioWare fan, a big, huge Mass Effect fan before Anthem came out, fired up Anthem, was like, this sucks. I hate this. I'm so mad. I just want to go back and play Mass Effect now, right? Like you feel that pull, that still desire to go replay the game back when you know, in your estimation, the developer was at their peak, or, you know, maybe the new entry in a franchise made design decisions that you just absolutely hate. And so you're like, I'm going to go back and just play the original, right?
Yeah.
And kind of, or maybe just like, oh, this is way too complicated. I cannot believe they made Tetris an MMO. I just want to go back and play original Tetris and get that enjoyment, right? Like, there's definitely, I feel like that is also a strong motivator, especially, and it might be actually be unique to video games. Maybe not entirely, but I definitely think that there's also sort of a a sort of like we go replay the games, sort of seeking vindication for our opinions, is sort of an aspect I think that is definitely present there as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well then, okay, so let's talk personally then. What when you decide that you're going to take the time out of your busy life and busy schedule. Now, you could probably talk about this in the context of also before you were married and had kids, or maybe even just before you had kids. But like, if you're going to take the time out of your schedule to replay a game, what criteria do you use to determine whether or not you're actually going to pull the trigger on that?
There was a very stark change in my entire perception of gaming around 2015, which is when my first son was born, and now. Do you want me to talk about like prior to that or now?
Whatever you want to talk about. If you want to say just like, what are your criteria now? I only say that because like I'm pretty sure that right now my criteria would be I just don't have time for it.
Right, exactly.
I don't replay games because I don't have time for it, and there's plenty of other new games that I had, new experiences that I haven't have yet.
Exactly.
So yeah. So like, okay, great. We can agree on that. So then what criteria would you use in the future when you do have more time, or what criteria did you use before, you know, you brought humans into the world?
I'll fall back to my old habits before children, when gaming was a lot more prevalent. I used to be very, very spontaneous, and I would just follow my gut. Mm-hmm. So we just talked about all the different reasons why we replay games. So like that certain time of year, that certain time of day, that certain experience that you had that teleported you to a video game experience. Like I would use that. Also like listening to shows. So we just did the 200 episode of Sacred Symbols, right? So there's so many games there that I just got these feelings like, oh, I'd love to go finish that game. I'd love to try New Game Plus on that game. And I would use that, and that would be my guide. I would just be like, oh, cool. There's a whole New Game Plus I've not done on Ghost of Tsushima. I'm going to go do that. Or Detroit. I haven't finished Detroit, Become Human. So I'm going to go back and finish that. And like just hearing people talk. And then us, when we do our everything episodes or Soul in the Console, like I want to go experience a console. So I'll just like, Sega Genesis was awesome. Let me pull my entire Sega Genesis library out and just run through like 5 minutes to a half hour on each various title and just go with that. And it would be very much like feeling oriented. That's what I used to do before my gaming time was so cherished. And that's probably what I imagine what my life will look like later on in retirement, when I'm sitting in this house with a library of thousands of games and like a digital library of thousands of games, and can just like play whatever I want whenever. That's what I like to think. So yeah, just follow your gut.
That, or you'll have just like the absolute worst decision paralysis, right? Like worse than like if you're scrolling through Netflix and you're like, oh no, gosh, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a different aspect.
I want to play an old game, and you'll like see too many. You'll be like, oh,
that's not what I do, right? So there's a difference. Me just following my gut is like, oh, I want to play this game, and just go downstairs or wherever my library is and go play it, and not have to worry about it. Like I've got it. Yeah, the sitting there like looking at the wall of games is an entirely different feeling. That's like
different intention, right? Like you're like, exactly. I'm going to go force this experience. I'm going to go force this nostalgia, and I'm going to look at my wall.
You can't
library.
force it,
but then you can't. Like,
some
it's
people
got to
can.
be yeah. Those are very decisive people. I'm not a very decisive person.
Same here.
For me,
I'm not either.
I've definitely used to be like the sort of go with my gut, but I would do that in general, right? Like I wouldn't back in the day, back in like college and stuff. I just went with my gut on everything. I had the mindset of like, if I'm not having fun, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do something else that does sound fun right now, right? Mm-hmm. So that was just sort of a life philosophy I had in general. But I do have a different approach towards gaming now, so I'm not quite sure how those will reconcile on the other side of early parenthood. I definitely think I will be replaying games with my kids. Like that'll be a strong motivator when they're old enough to really like get it. Just sitting down and either watching them play it or like taking turns. Like I definitely think that'll be a part of my life if they're into it.
Right.
And definitely think that will sort of be a strong motivator. But like if I'm talking about right now, if I think I can look at myself right now, because there are definitely circumstances in which I will and would replay games. It definitely has to be during sort of a lull. So I think the most likely time would be this sort of late spring, midsummer window where things don't tend to come out as much.
Mm-hmm.
With a few exceptions, right? But 2020, for example, was just like May and June were like cram packed, and it wasn't until like August that I had a free month. But right now, it's the opposite. Right now, I'm like, it's been a month already of just kind of like, I will definitely say, sorry, as a sort of a side note, another kind of motivator for replaying games would be if like you didn't finish it.
Right.
Or like you said, if there's new content or a new remaster or something where it's like, oh, I loved this back when it looked like, blocky polygons, so I'll probably love it even more now that they like cleaned it up and made it all sexy looking. So I definitely think that
now you're touching on my current reasons for replaying.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's I think it. But like I would say that for now, the biggest criteria is like, do I have time? Do I have time for this? And is there anything else that would like this would be taking attention away from that I wouldn't want that for? So there are definitely times when that happens. So I definitely feel that. So I'd be like, playing with my kids would be a big criteria. Like, do they want to play it? Would that be bonding time? And then obviously like having time for it. But also, yeah, I mean, I've got to have that strong pull, right? Like it's got to have been a game. Like it's gonna. I don't think I do a lot of replaying of games that didn't have a big impression on me. It's got to be like the games that are in my like top 25, top 50. Or are somehow otherwise just really connected to a strong piece of nostalgia. Like if you were to drop an N64 in front of me right now with like a solid CRT, like a good quality CRT that's still working, but has like all the connectors and everything, and then you just dropped Jet Force Gemini in there, I'd be like, all right, podcast is over. Let's fire
go.
Up.
I have all that Gemini here, by the way, so come over. Like that's here. I have literally everything you just described.
Yeah, everything I described. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So another criteria is like, do I have friends? Do we have time together? Is that like what we decided to do is play like old retro games? In which case, then yes, that shared experience is another big kind of criteria that I have. Or like, if a bunch of friends want to get online and play something like Diablo 2, right? Like, hey, let's relive our Diablo 2 glory days, original version, none of this like re-resurrected crap. Just like, let's fire up the old clients and go to town. Like, that's the kind of thing where I'll definitely be like, yeah, let's do it, bros. Or like old Halo 1 legendary mode, right? With you, like that's another big criteria. I'm like, yep, I would totally. We had talked about replaying all the Halos before Infinite came out. So yeah.
Time gets away from us. My last thoughts about replaying games are my current reasons. And you touched on them. Like, what gets me to replay a game now is because I'm so trophy oriented and progress oriented. I have to feel like I'm making progress when I'm playing anything. I am trash for re-releases. Like, I absolutely will play a game again if they've up-resed it, they've smoothed it out, and here's a new trophy list. So you're going to make new progress experiencing the old thing again. And it's a good segue into our next question about success stories for retro gaming, because I'll talk about one that was there that I love and adored.
There's in relation to that, I will say I shared that. I will say that I have shared that impulse before as recently as this past weekend. There's the spring sale that was on the PlayStation Store for pretty much like all of April is over now, and there's like a new sale in its place. And I was browsing through the titles in that sale. I totally saw things like Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah,
and I was like, I wonder what the trophy list looks like for that.
It's doable.
And I also, is it really? And I also saw because I've been wanting to replay. I've been the urge to replay that. So like you said, like getting and having an excuse in the form of trophies. But I also saw like all the Castlevania games were on sale.
Yeah, they were.
And I'm like, I bet you they're hard as crap because it's Capcom.
Yeah, right.
But like, do they have trophy lists?
They do.
Like, how achievable are they? Like, so
mediocre. Yeah. I also picked up like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World during that April sale because I had it on PS3, finished it, didn't get the platinum because it's crazy, but I was like, oh, it's on PS4. It's a different trophy list. Well, I'll go back through that game again. It's super fun. It's a beat 'em up retro game. Let's go. So I bought it. It was stupid cheap. I don't know if I'll ever play it. So yeah, I'm with you. If there's an excuse to play it, I'll jump in.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well then, my last, we'll end with this question. What would you say is like a success story where you were like, I decided to replay a game. I wasn't sure if I was going to see it all the way through, but like I did it for no other reason than the nostalgia of it, and I just had a blast. It was super fulfilling. It was super great. Or consequently, or when was a time that it was like, that was a waste of time. That game sucked. I cannot believe I ever loved that. Or rather, that game didn't age well and just like maybe kind of soured your like experience a bit. Like, speak to either or both of those if you want.
Sure. I'm looking at my trophy list to give you the timeline of most recent. I have a couple of success stories. I won't go into details like super, other than just like I had a good time and I didn't platinum most of them. I just played through them. I mainlined them. Battlefield 3 on PS3 was I did that in October of 2021. Just went through the campaign again and experienced the world of Battlefield 3, and I was obsessed with that game when it first came out. Sonic Generations, I'd played on the 360, so in August of 2021, with my son's appreciation for Sonic, going back to childhood, but also fresh trophy list, so I completed the story there, and I live streamed the entirety of Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, which was a great success story. I almost platinumed it, except for like a second playthrough on hard that I have zero desire to do. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remade, fresh trophy list, up-resed, modern mechanics, great gameplay, awesome. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's a lot of success stories of going back. I do this a lot. I'm actually surprising myself as I go back. The Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was another one. The Spyro collection that I played through 1 and 2 of. Turok 1, I did 100% all of the trophies, except there's no platinum, so it's just sitting there as 100% on my list. I went through and played Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man back in 2021 as well. Nostalgia hit. So, and Final Fantasy 9, finished that December of 2020. So I'm going to stop there because there's even more, but that's a huge list of success stories of me replaying
I was
games.
say, is it gonna keep going? I just leaned back in my chair and was listening.
Yeah, I'm going to stop, but I have more. I have lots more.
Let me think here. I was, a big Borderlands 2 fan, had it on PC, played it a lot. Definitely replayed it when I got my PlayStation, was getting into trophy hunting. I was like, well, I need these trophies. So that was great. Like, it was a little tedious for a few of the trophies in both 1, 2, and pre-sequel, but I think I look back fondly. I don't look back on that being like, wow, that was awful and a waste of time. No, I look back really fondly on playing those games and going after those trophies. I replayed, like I mentioned, Bloodborne. So I played it for the first time in October of 2020. and then I played it again in October 2021, a year later. And like I said, I intended to just play through it one time doing an arcane build. And then, when I finished that up, I was like, well, let me just like there's this cool little trick I found, a glitch, and I could get a weapon way early in the game that I wasn't supposed to get. So I was like, I'll do that. And then I'll just stop. And then that way next year I'll have something. But then I ended up just playing again through because I was like, I have to try the weapon out. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then finally I played it a third time because, about halfway through the end of that one, I was like, man, I want to go back and try my werewolf build on my original character. Because I had like tried it out the first time. Like got to the point where I got everything I needed for it. And then was like, wow, this isn't as good as my other build. And since I was still trash at those games at that point, I was like, I'm not going to push my luck. This build is out of my league. But then having just played through the game like 2 times with the relatively complex builds, I was like, I think I can do it now. And I did. I was again intending to just go kill a couple bosses with it, but I was just shredding so much stuff. I was like, this is so much fun. I played a third time. So I would, I guess, define that as a success story. Maybe maybe someone else would define that as like mentally ill, but I had fun. So I got fulfillment out of it. So
nice.
Gosh, trying to think of like older titles too. I did back in college. This was almost a decade ago, but this game has been around for like 2 decades. I used to always regularly play Ocarina of Time to the point where I had it like the game basically memorized enough that I was convinced for a long time I could do it within 1 24-hour sitting. And more than that, I was like, I could do it probably within 12 hours. And then I had a girl that I liked at the time. This is before my wife and I we were friends at the time, but we weren't like together. She was dating someone else. And so I was like, I was into this girl and she like challenged me. She's like, I bet I could beat it before you do. I was like, you're on. And so over spring break, I think we had set a date basically to race each other. And then she never showed, meaning that like, I think she was at home it was like spring break and she was at home. And I like messaged her, I was like, today's the day, we're starting, I'm going, I got a plan and everything. And I did. And then like, she's like, oh, I didn't even play. I was like, come on. So anyways, but I was racing against myself at that point. I think I clocked in at like 8 hours or something, like total game time with a break, like a 2-hour break in the middle. So I was like, yeah. So that was a sort of success story. I can't think of any like major failures. The one that came to mind immediately was I did try to fire up Destiny 2 a while ago when they made a bunch of content free. That was more to try the new content out, but I literally played for like 5 minutes. I was like, I hate this. I don't want to play it anymore. And I uninstalled it. So like that was probably the most blatant fail story. I can even talk even more recently. I fired up Halo Infinite.
Oh, really?
I mean, I know it's brand new, but I fired it up again being like, I want to get I just had like some downtime at work, which had been rare up to that point. And I had kind of gotten off the Elden Ring train. I didn't really feel like firing up my PS4 and remote play. So I was like, you know what? I'll just fire up a round to a Halo. And I was just so pissed off. I think I'm actually it's still on my computer, but just today I was looking at it. I was like, I'm going to uninstall it. I'm pissed off.
No, wait for season 2. There's supposed to be a whole bunch of cool new stuff. I want to try it. I'm pumped. I'm like, people in the neighborhood are going to play. It's going to be awesome.
Nice. All right. Well,
I didn't talk about failures.
Sure. Do me your failures real quick.
I tried to fire up Star Wars Jedi Knight. The first Jedi Knight 2 was re-released.
Jedi Academy?
Outcast.
Oh yeah, Outcast. Yeah,
I have Academy on deck. Like I bought it. Yeah, Jedi Outcast. Wow, what a game! Like did not age well, even on a modern platform. Like woof. The platform
that game
mechanics
made me a believer
in
the dark side because in that game it was so much more fun to force choke people than it was to force push people.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
or like heal. Yeah. No, I want a lightning. I don't want to heal anyone. I want a lightning. Yeah, I've also like tried to go back and play Lego Harry Potter on PS4 because they again like a re-release, 60 frames per second, etc. And then it just did not click. The puzzles were like it's so slowly paced. It's like it's the slow pacing. Everything is just so drawn out, and like I'm falling asleep. It was bad. I never finished it,
dude. For like every Zelda game that I just, I obviously talk a lot about Zelda, and like I have played all of like the 3D Zelda games. I've like at least replayed once, with one exception, and that was Skyward Sword. And I tried to go back and do Skyward Sword. Hooked up the Wii U and everything. This is well after I had my PlayStation and my Switch and everything. But I was like, I'm gonna play some Skyward Sword. It was before the new one was announced.
Yeah,
I tried. I got like maybe to the first dungeon, and I was like, I don't like this. Something about it, I didn't like it. It's not that it's bad. I just like it. Just feels the game like though it was like top of the line graphics at the time. Like it's been almost 20 years now since then, and I just hated the motion controls and everything. So maybe I would like it better with the Switch controls, but I was just like, nope.
Do you have the Switch one?
This one of all of them is not for me. I don't.
Ah, yeah, it's good. That hooked me. That was almost a full success story of almost an entire playthrough. I've got a lot of hours into it, but I haven't finished it yet. So I don't consider it a failure. The last failure I'll talk about is my kickoff and excitement for Kingdom Hearts 3. I was like, I'm going to play through all of the Kingdom Hearts lore. I'm going to get everything. I'm going to get all that story injected into my eyes. And I got through Kingdom Hearts 1, which is a success story, but I despised and hated everything about Rechain of Memories. And I skipped it after getting 3 trophies and jumped into Kingdom Hearts 2, which I have very fond memories of. Some people argue it's the best of the series, which in my nostalgic brain, I would agree. Like, yeah, it probably was. But whoa, I could not finish that. I dropped off hard. I was like, I can't do this. It is way too obtuse. The platforming is not fun. And the story was not hooking me, so I'll just get a synopsis. Like, it was a bad. So some games just don't age well, and you find out when you try to replay them. Sure. Was Stick of Truth a replay for you, South Park?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a success story. You didn't talk about it. So.
Yep, that was a success story because I actually got to get the well, it was a success story because I got the platinum, but it was a slight tiny failure near the end of the game through when I realized that I missed one. I had to go through the whole Facebook friends list and realized I missed Lemmywinks and had to go back. But like I was able to reload a save, but the problem is you have to get them all concurrent. I couldn't just get it and it added to my no. Right, I had to get all. That's why I did replay the back half of the game pretty much. Now the good news is it was like a 5-hour total game, so the back half of the game was like another 2 hours. I was able to knock it out in like a night or two.
Right,
but I was a little bit like irritated about that because then I had to still anally go through and get every other friend too that I had gotten. I was just so like no, but yeah, that was a replay. And then I think also the Fractured But Whole was a replay for me as well because I had played it originally on the PlayStation but hadn't been a trophy hunter at the time, so I replayed it to get the trophy.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So I replayed both South Park games. So
nice,
good pull there for me. So gosh, that was probably one of my most productive years, like pure raw productivity on platinums.
This is why folks who are sick to death of hearing me talk about trophies, when I say it is like a gaming journal, this is what I'm doing. I am looking at a trophy list. I don't have a crazy memory. I don't remember your stint through South Park Stick of Truth. I saw the game on my trophy list. It was like, oh, you did it too, because that's a journal. I love it. It is a forever permanent history track record of what we've done. It's great. All right, what's next?
Well, what's next is we want to hear from the listeners about replaying games. What are your thoughts? Are you fond of it? Do you find it tedious and you never want to do it? If you are fond of it, what are your success stories and failure stories? And if you hate it, we want to hear all the reasons why you only ever play the cream of the crop, best of the best new experiences. And what games if you've ever been tempted to replay a game, what game was it that had that unique draw for someone who typically hates it? You can share all those thoughts and more, and Termite will remind you where you can do that.
Tell us all about your arcade experiences, because we're replaying games forever there, over at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com, landing website again, where you'll find links to our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, and Discord. Jump into a live chat. I am trash for nostalgia games. I absolutely adore them. I love retro gaming. I'm obsessed. I am so excited about the Cowabunga collection. I can't see straight. T-Bone and I are going to platinum all 13 Turtles games, or there's probably just going to be one platinum for playing all of them. But I'm going to do it, and it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait. So come share your excitement about retro nostalgia gaming with us over at Discord, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter. And if you love this show and want to hear all of our other topics, like episodes we harkened back to, you can find the list of all of our shows at 80bitpodsmash.com, as well as their audio platforms, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and all of the other things you would like. Don't forget about our YouTube and our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, where we have our monthly video game review stream. And who knows what May will bring, but you will be made aware of it if you keep an eye on our social media outlets. So all of that...
made aware of it.
Hey, I love it. And all of it's ad-free and completely free to you, because we don't make any money on this. So it's great for everyone involved.
Sweet. All right. So I'm going to caveat this and say that we are going to be doing the next 4 episodes are all going to be series. However, we're doing something very different. In June, we're going to be doing a different kind of series where normally we have these series, we have these kind of themes and episodes where it's like, we'll, so on the console, we'll do another console, but we'll be like episodes, lots of episodes in between each installment of that series. This is a series that we're doing where we're going to literally do 3 episodes in a row on the same big topic, but with like subtopics on each one, right? So we're going to be talking, so for the month of June, we're going to be talking about like reasons and strategies and like the importance of non-gamers and gaming. It's a topic I've been really passionate about. I've sort of been casually dropping it and mentioning hits on it for a while now. So it's something I've been wanting to do. I was like, hey, June is my birth month. Why don't we do this? And so it's a little different. So it's gonna be 3 in a row that are basically like different parts of the same topic. But we still have an episode between now and then. And so, but before the non-gamer series, I wanted to get you all thinking about that and percolating that though. But before we do that, we're going to really quickly drop into our Soul in the Console series, which I had mentioned. And we are 1 entry into the Nintendo handhelds line of that. So we're going to be following up with the Game Boy Advance. So next week we'll talk about Game Boy Advance. And then the following Monday we'll talk about reasons for non-gamers to get into gaming. So a lot of cool content for you to look forward to.
I love it.
We'll see you then.
See you next week.